Hi, my name is Pete Hahn, and thank you for watching this tutorial video. Be sure to visit www.hahn-tech.com for the full library of video tutorials. I hope this video increases your knowledge and helps you become more efficient with this topic, whether for home or work. Please support this channel by sharing these videos with your friends and colleagues. Hi guys, welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to show you how to take an idea about an indicator. Let's say you have one of your favorite indicators and you like what happens to the price action when your indicator crosses or does something above the zero line, whatever. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to take that idea that you spot on a chart and build a custom scan in Thinkorswim's platform that will tell you whenever that pattern occurs on a stock, and you can scan it against the entire universe of stocks or a select group. To get started, I will go ahead and reset the flexible grid, and all I'm doing here is I'm separating this out into two screens. I'm going to put a daily chart on the right and a weekly chart on the left. I'm going to turn off the customized grid, and that will turn off the little control boxes in the middle. Now let's change the right hand chart to a weekly time frame. Before I do that, I just remembered something. I want to have a particular style on here. Let's put in a stock. Nothing in particular here. Again, I want to emphasize nothing I'm showing you here today is intended to be a recommendation to buy or sell any instrument of any kind. I'm not trying to show you how to make money in the markets. I'm not trying to show you profitable entries or exits. All I'm trying to do is show you how to take an idea that you have and put that into a custom scan. So I'm going to change the style to something I've got saved here I call basic black. And let's change the right hand chart to a daily. I'm going to access the settings, and I'm going to access the time axis, and I'm going to turn off show expiration Friday. For our purposes today, we won't be needing that. Let's also access the settings, and for the time axis we want to have 5 bars on the right of empty space. Do that for both charts. Looking good. Now I want to adjust the zoom, and first I want to check and see on the style menu. You can go down to your aggregation period and you'll see that it is showing as 3-year weekly, 3 years of 1 week bars. So for the daily, I also want to show, I go to style and I change it to 3 years and select day for daily bars, 3 years. So I've got the same amount of data on both charts. And I want to adjust the zoom on the weekly so that everything that's displayed on the daily is encompassed on the weekly. So you see where I've got the crosshairs now. What that means is on the weekly, I'm going to move my cursor to that position. I'm going to click and drag. That is going to cause the weekly chart to zoom. And now if you follow the cursor on both screens, the right and the left, so now the daily chart on the right has a range that encompasses everything that I can see on the weekly chart on the left, right, from beginning to end. Just helps me to line things up. Okay, next I'm going to throw on a couple of studies. They're going to be momentum studies. I'll add the MACD histogram first, and second I'll add the stochastic slope. I'll hit apply and OK. I'll do the same on the daily chart. Okay, and remember, as I said, what I'm trying to show you is how to take an idea that you spot on a chart and build a custom scan that allows the computer to automatically identify stocks that meet that criteria for you. And so what's pretty simple to apply is something like, let's say this stochastic here. The slow K is bottoming out. There's a little pivot right there. And then it crosses above the slow D. So K crossing above D after K goes below, let's say, the 50% level. Now we filter out some of the noise. And look what's happening. The MACD is doing the same. You have a MACD that is pivoting, okay, from negative to positive. Okay, so how would we plot that to pick up those signals? First thing we need to do is we need to grab the code from each of these two studies and combine them into one of our own making. So by clicking on the little scroll, you can see the language, and this is just a scripting language. This isn't really computer code, so don't get freaked out. It's just a scripting language. It's called ThinkScript. And you have your fast length, your slow length, your MACD length. These are your inputs. This is your settings, 12, 26, 9. Anybody familiar with the MACD should recognize those immediately, just so you know where it's coming from and how the code is taking that information and using it in the formula. And you only have one plot, and it's the difference of the MACD fast and slow length. So it's very simple. We'll just copy this onto the clipboard. We can press cancel here, and I'm going to create a new study, bottom left. I'm going to call this new study Scan MACD Stochastic, and I'll abbreviate Stochastic. And I named it that way because I plan to combine the two indicators into one custom study. Now I don't want to actually plot. I'm going to change the plot statement here to a define statement. So now we've defined a value called DIFF that represents the MACD histogram. Pretty simple, huh? Press OK, and that will save it. Now we want to grab the code for the stochastic slow. We'll double click the scroll down. We'll find the plots that we want to capture are the slow K and the slow D. So let's go ahead and grab the code for that all the way up to all the inputs. We'll right click, select copy, go to cancel. And now from our studies, if you click this search box drop down, you can scroll to the bottom and select user defined, and here you will see a list of all of your custom studies, and this is where you will find the one that we just saved. What did I call it? I said I would call it Scan MACD Stochastic. So after we've captured the code for the stochastic slow, let's click on the scroll icon for the custom study that we created, Scan MACD Stochastic. And now we can add a new line here by pressing enter a couple of times, and I will simply right click and select paste. Now there's something I want to show you real quickly here. Let's expand this a little bit, a little bit more room. And what happens is the compiler will highlight in red anything that is an error, and all this is saying is that this appears twice and you can't have the same input defined twice. So we're going to rename each of these, okay? So average type appears twice, one for the MACD and one for the stochastic, and in order to separate those, we'll just rename them. I'll add MACD to the end of the one that applies to the MACD, and I will add STOCH to the one that applies to the stochastic. And then all we need to do is update. You see now it shows in red the average type because that input doesn't exist anymore because we renamed it. So I'll replace it, and then I'll do the same with the stochastic. I'll select copy, and then you see average type here that it's in red. We'll hit paste, and we'll scroll down. There's one more place where that average type is used, and then we'll paste there. So now we've replaced the average type with average type MACD, and we've replaced the average type with average type stochastic. All right. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to replace these plot statements with define statements because we only want to define their values. We don't want to plot them. And I'll scroll down here a little bit, and we need to delete the style statements for the plots. Since we changed those from plots to define, they won't accept a style statement. Okay, now we're ready to create our own plot. So this is pretty simple. You know, for those of you who are interested in markets, typically you're pretty good with numbers. Math is not a big challenge for you. This is really just, it's simple math. Maybe algebra, but don't get freaked out because we're looking at some computer code here. It's a scripting language. It's very basic, and if you follow the logic here, it's really very simple. We're going to create pair parentheses because we're going to create multiple conditions. we're going to have a condition that's going to say, all right, look back to find a place where the slow k of the previous bar, so I put 1 in brackets, that's telling the code to look at the previous bar, and we're going to compare that to the current bar. So we're saying slow k. Alright, we'll put a semicolon at the end of this, and the red doesn't disappear until we call this. Let's go ahead and say we'll just plot this as data and put an equal sign. Alright, so the compiler accepts our changes. Let's add some empty space to the bottom to bring that up a little higher. So the compiler says, yep, everything looks good, and what we're doing is we're plotting a line called data, and we're plotting every time the slow k from the previous bar is less than the slow k from the current bar. We want to place an and then another set of parentheses, and what we want for the current bar is we want the current bar's value of slow k to be greater than the current bar's value of slow d. And I just realized I made a small error here. In this initial statement, what I want is I want it to be the slow k of the previous bar has to be less than the slow d of the previous bar. And the slow k of the current bar needs to be greater than the slow d of the current bar. So what we've done is we've established a crossover. Let's go ahead and hit apply and OK, and we'll hit apply and OK again. And we'll check this out and make sure it gives us everything we need. Let's double click on here, and that will open up the weekly chart so we can see its entire range, and let's make sure that we're getting exactly what we intended here. Everywhere this blue line here, which is the line we just created with the custom code, every time this line evaluates to true, in other words the statement is true, it gives a value of 1, and every time it evaluates to false it gives a value of 0. So everywhere that you see these little spikes, that's where the value is true. So let's test this out. For this bar, the slow k is above the slow d, and in the previous bar, the slow k is below the slow d. Okay, so we can get maybe a little bit clearer image over here. Let's move that to the center. So check this out, okay? So what this little spike here is telling us is that it found a spot where the slow k is greater than the slow d, and the previous bar is the slow k below the slow d. So we've got a simple little plot here that identifies every place that it crosses over. Now, we also have crossovers that are occurring while the slow d is well above the 50% level. So let's say for some reason that your master plan to take over the markets and make a bunch of money is that you need to make sure this occurs when the slow k is below the 50 level. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at that. We'll go ahead and modify our code. We'll go ahead and drop in another statement, double parentheses, and within the parentheses we'll type the lowest value of the slow k in the previous 3 bars, and we do need to tell the code that we want the code to look at the previous value of slow k for the previous 3 bars is less than 50. And let's see, we need a closing parentheses here. Somehow or another that escaped me. But there we go. So we've got 3 conditions. All 3 conditions must be satisfied to evaluate true. Let's hit apply and OK. And as you notice, what happened is we dropped off a few. So now what happens is this crossover needs to occur after the slow k has dipped down below the 50% level. Now you can pick whatever level you want. If you want it to be the 20% level or the 30% level, you know, hey, this is your dream. You put it in however you want, you know. But I'm just showing you how you can take an idea and put it into terms that a scan will understand. So let's see, the one last thing, we want to include the MACD in this, and what I want is for the MACD of the bar where the crossover occurs, I want that MACD to be higher than the previous. So I want both of the indicators to be in agreement. So we'll go back to studies, we'll hit edit studies, we'll double click the scroll icon and edit our code, and we'll add a 4th and final condition here by typing the word and, open and close parentheses, and within those parentheses we'll say that the DIFF, which is Remember, that's the MACD. And we're going to say the DIFF of the previous bar has to be less than DIFF of the current bar. We'll hit apply and OK. And we'll hit OK. So this is going to take out a lot of the other signals, and we're only going to be left with signals where both indicators are in agreement, and that's what we've got here. Okay, so now let's take a look at this. We'll double click this again. That will minimize it back so that we can see both the weekly and the daily charts together. And we'll take a look at this and see, okay, this little spike here resulted in a daily chart that continued to climb higher a little bit. It kind of flattened out. What did this signal do for it here? Let's move this daily chart so that we can see. I'll line up these cursors here. As you can see, the daily and the weekly, that vertical line is the same on both time frames. So this is where the weekly signal occurs, and it resulted in a pretty reasonable move. So if you like this and you want to go ahead and build a scanner based around this, well, you've already got the code completed. The scanner is going to pick up every time one of these spikes hits. That's how it works. Pretty simple. So let's move on to the scanning utility in Thinkorswim and give this a test. Okay, so now that we are on the scan page of Thinkorswim's platform, I'll just let you know that I had to log out of the paper trading side of Thinkorswim's platform because I found out that the add study filter will not function unless you're on your live account. So I went ahead and made some changes, so you'll see some differences in the way the screen presents. Okay, so let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is scan in all stocks. I'm going to intersect with a category of all optionable, and that's going to reduce by about 2/3 the number of matches that we get. Then I'm going to change the first filter to the last price, which is essentially the same as the last daily close. I'm going to change that to $25. And I'm going to change the max to 500, and that's just reducing the number of matches that we get. I'm going to remove the next two by pressing the red X's. I'm going to add the first custom add study filter, and I'm going to change this to a volume average, and I want to set the value to a 10-day simple average of the volume, and I want it to be greater than 500,000. And I want that set to daily. Good. Alright, so now all we need to do is capture the code from our indicator that we created in a previous step and add that in as another study filter. So let's go back to charts. And let's go to studies, edit studies, and let's go ahead and double click on the scroll icon. And then we can click and drag to select all of our code. We don't need the first line. We'll select copy, and then we can press cancel and press cancel because we're not making any changes there. We'll take you back over to the scan screen, and for this custom study it's currently set to ADX crossover. We're going to press the pencil. That's the button in between the aggregation period and the red X. By the way, I want to change this to weekly because I only want the code to work on weekly time frame. So I click on the pencil. The pencil opens up an edit window, and you've got two tabs here, Condition Wizard and ThinkScript Editor. What we'll do then is we'll highlight any existing code that happens to be in there and delete it. Then we can right click and select Paste. And this is our code. The only thing we'll need to do is change the description here. In the previous code I had put in the word data here. I'm going to change it to the word scan because that's what the scanner accepts. So we'll plot once and we'll plot it in the name of scan, and we'll use our 4 conditions and we'll press OK, and then we can press scan. So we have our results. We returned a total of 47 stocks in our scan results. Now I'll show you how to use these in a watch list and link the watch list to your charts so that you can thumb through these just by clicking on them. So go back to charts, and while I'm looking at charts, we'll go ahead and click the show gadgets button. It's in the bottom left. And you notice that I've got a watch list set up here. If you don't have a watch list set up, then you can simply click over here and change whatever's there to, you can say switch gadget, and then you can pick watch list, and that's how you can change whatever you've got to, let's say you had live news, you can just change that to a watch list simply by hitting switch gadget and then changing it to a watch list. Pretty simple, and you can collapse that if you don't want to view that. So, alright, right now it's set to a watch list that I've previously saved, and so to find your scan, first you have to save it. Okay, it's going to show up under personal, but we need to make sure that we save that scan. So we'll go ahead and go back to scan, and we want to hit this button up here in the upper right, and we want to say save scan query. We're going to name it scan underscore MACD underscore STOCH and underscore one more time, and we'll put weekly in there to remind us that this is a weekly aggregation period. We'll hit save and hit OK. If you've already saved it before, it'll just maintain the changes that you made. So now we'll go back to charts, and we'll click the gear for the watch list, and we'll go to personal, and we'll scroll down until we find that scan that we just saved, scan MACD stochastic weekly. Click that, and it will take a little while to refresh. There we go. And notice that I've got this link set up to number 9, sky blue, and it's that way also on the charts, sky blue for each the daily and the weekly links. Okay, so what that will do is it will ensure that anytime I click on stock on the watch list, it automatically updates the charts. Okay, so true to form, as we told the scan, we wanted to know anytime that the custom code that we created evaluated to true, or a value of 1. So here you see the little spike, and for the week that's closed, I'm doing this on a Saturday, so if you're ever doing a weekly scan, you always want to wait and do them at the end of the week. Whether that's a Saturday or a Friday. If Friday's a market close day, then you can do it on a Friday. But always make sure the week is complete before you run any weekly aggregated scans. Otherwise, you're going to be running in the middle of the week and you're not going to get the final week's signal. It will change. So let's scan through a few of these. And you can see as I scan through each one, they all have that little spike on the most recently closed week, the current closed week bar. So we'll click through here a few of these, and you can see that the scan faithfully picks up every place that this little indication appears, and this is simply our logic. We said we want to know anytime that the slow K crosses above the slow D after the slow K has been below the 50% level, and we also want it to confirm with the MACD climbing higher, and that's exactly what it's giving us. Okay, so that's how you take an idea, something that you spot on the charts, and if you've got access to the source code, any of the standard built-in indicators for Thinkorswim, you'll have access to the source code. You just copy and paste it into your own, build it, and you can add multiple layers. I only added 2 indicators. You can add 3 or 4. You can add crossovers of moving averages. There's a whole lot of different things that you can do, and it's really pretty easy because it's not really computer code. It's just ThinkScript, and it's pretty easy. It's pretty logical to follow. So there you go. That's how you create it, and I hope it helps. Thanks. Thank you for watching this tutorial video. Be sure to visit www.hahn-tech.com for the full library of tutorials. I hope this video increases your knowledge and helps you become more efficient with this topic, whether for home or work. Please support this channel by sharing these videos with your friends and colleagues. Thanks, and take care.